Should Scotland sack Steve Clarke? That's the big question and the big debate. Again, we had it after the Euros. He kept his job and we're having it once more after that heavy defeat against Greece. And it's not because of the heavy defeat against Greece that we're having this discussion, although I would suggest that performance and lineup symbolises why a lot of people want to see change, but it's the timing. The Nations League campaign has come to an end. We've got friendlies in the summer, and then we've got the World Cup qualifiers starting in September as well. So the timing, if we were to make change, is now. Now is the right time if you want to see Clarke to go. Now, when I've seen a lot of people suggest that they do want change, they want to see Clarke go, the most popular counter-argument I'm seeing at the minute is, well, who do you want to see replace him? Because there's a lot of be careful what you wish for when it comes to those that want to see Clarke removed from his position as Scotland manager. And it does feel like that question is weighted so that the person wanting change, you better come up with a name. And if you don't come up with a suitable replacement for Clarke, someone who is better than him and also available and willing to take the job, then your opinion is null and void. You're not allowed to want Clarke to go unless you can name someone to replace him. And I don't buy that. I don't agree with that whatsoever. I think as a Scotland fan, you're perfectly entitled to think that Clarke has run his course, it's got a bit stale, now's the time for change, but you just don't know who should replace him. You're allowed to think that. It's not your job, it's the SFA's job. Their job is to come up with a suitable replacement for Steve Clarke. They should have one eye on this already, because Clarke was asked before the doubleheader with Greece about his future, about his contract again. And he's been saying this for some time now, that he's going to let his contract run down. And before Greece game, he said, 75% chance I see my contract out, which runs until next year, at the end of that World Cup campaign, and then I'll go 75% chance. That's what the manager has put on it as probability of him leaving. So the SFA should already have one eye on potential candidates and replacements for Clarke. Now, whether they do or not is a different debate. My answer would be no. I have no confidence that they are doing that. Because Clarke left it open to staying. For every 75% chance, there's a 25% chance he will stay. And I imagine if we were to qualify for the World Cup, he may sign a new deal. I think he'd get offered one, certainly. And I think he might sign it. Of course, the question is, will we qualify for the World Cup? At the moment, my answer is no. And just like you're allowed to want Clarke to go without knowing a replacement, you're allowed to think that Steve Clarke's done a good job, appreciate what he's done, if you think he's done a good job, of course, but also, at the same time, have little to no faith in him leading Scotland into those World Cup qualifiers in September. And that's where I am at the minute. I know who I wanted to replace Steve Clarke. David Moyes. He was available after the Euros. I felt like it would have been a good time to say thank you very much. We're going to move on now. And Moyes was available. And Moyes has spoken in the past about his desire to manage Scotland. I think he'd make a really good national coach as well, in the sense that he has to work with a certain pool of players, get the best out of those that he can work with. When I look at the profile of players available in that Scotland squad, I think Moyes would love to work with some of them. McGinn, McTominay, Ferguson, Robertson. I think he would get the best out of a lot of them when they pull on the Scotland shirt. And I think Clarke has. Not all of them, not all the ones I mentioned. I've never seen Liverpool's Andy Robertson playing for Scotland. And of course, I know what the comeback will be. Well, what do you expect? He's playing with Grant Hanley, not Van Dijk. But even just as deliveries, I feel like we've never really seen... I feel like when he's played for Liverpool, maybe not this season, but in the past, he's been world class, one of the best left backs in European football for a period of time. Never really felt like that watching him play for Scotland. But yet, when I see Gareth Bale turn up for Wales in the past, I felt like I was watching the Real Madrid version running around in red. The world class Bale turned up. But Moyes, I think, would have been brilliant for this group of players that we've got. But I feel like that's gone, that opportunity. Everton manager now, don't see him leaving that anytime soon. Maybe there will be a Moyes in Scotland thing in the future, but I think there will be another manager between Steve Clarke and David Moyes. Who that will be, I'm not sure. I've seen certain names banded around like Derek McInnes. He's there's not really any that's ticking the boxes for me. Russell Martin, I think, plays good football. That's not what you're looking for when it comes to National League football. You're looking for results. And under Clarke, we've had some fantastic nights and some superb results. We're still the last team to have beaten Spain. We beat Spain nearly 2 years ago, and we're still the last country to do it. But those nights, for a little while, feels a little bit few and far between now. And it's about looking forward and not backwards. I think Clarke's done a good job. I think he's restored a lot of pride back into the national team. I think he's restored a lot of enjoyment, certainly for myself, back into watching Scotland play. Before, I used to watch Scotland with little hope. Now, under Clarke, I was going into games fearless, actually. I wasn't really that worried about who we were coming up with. I always thought we had a chance under Clarke. That feeling's disappeared a bit. But the thing that's done it for me is how we performed at the European Championships, because he's led us to back-to-back Euro Championships. It's a great achievement, but context must be applied. It got extended to 32 teams. It would have been a shambles if we didn't qualify. We also had the Nations League there, almost as a backup way of qualifying two things that weren't available to managers before. So it's easier now than ever to qualify for the European Championships. But he still had to get us there, and he's done it. I remember being incredibly excited for 2020 Euros, and we were pish. But I was willing to give the squad and Clarke the benefit of the doubt and say, right, we were inexperienced, it's new to us, been over 2 decades since we're at a major tournament. I felt like it showed. But we qualified for the next one. Not the World Cup, that was disappointing, but we got back into the Euro 2024. And I was really disappointed by the performance because it felt like we were there to make up numbers. We didn't lay a glove on anyone. And there's been a lot of crucial games. Greece to some extent, Hungary in particular, where I feel Clarke's tactics were wrong and Clarke's lack of reaction during the game was just non-existent. That you go in at half-time, it's not working, and nothing changes. Very much what happened against Greece, very much what happened against Hungary, and it's not isolated incidents either. Now, after the Euros, he changed his tactic. He's gone to 4 at the back. It was a welcome thing. He thought, here we go. Maybe he's learning, he's adapting. But the problem is he's changed formation, but he's kept the same players. He's got his favourites in there. And the win in Greece was a good result. But if we're completely honest with ourselves, we got battered in the second half. We scored a very soft penalty. I think it's fair to say the pen we got in Greece was debatable. It was a very soft pen. We went in 1-0 at half-time. Second half we came out and we got battered. But really good performances defensively. And I feel like Greece's tactics were poor. They kept on crossing it high, and our centre-backs were fine. They didn't mind that whatsoever. They were lapping it up. We got out there with a vital win. But there was an element of got off with it. Then at Hampden, we started quite brightly, 15, 20 minutes. We were looking all right. But then it felt like Greece just turned their tactics on and we had no answer. Instead of crossing it in the air, they were knocking on the deck and doing cutbacks, and we just didn't know what to do. The players that were questionable for their inclusion in Hanley, McLean, Ralston had good performances away. But I feel like it masked their inability and why they shouldn't have been playing for Scotland. Because Hanley in Greece still, in the first half, stopped running at one point and the ball bounced in front of him. We got off with it. Then he originally conceded a penalty before VAR correctly said, hang on a minute, outside the box, it's a free kick. He got away with it on both occasions. We didn't learn from that. We played him again and he was poor. Ralston got absolutely annihilated at Hampden. But there's also possibly an element of fatigue in there, 2 games in short succession. But the problem is, those players he's picking do not play for their clubs. Grant Hanley's barely had a sniff at League One Birmingham. Meanwhile, sat on the bench, we've got McKenna, who's playing week in, week out, over in Spain in La Liga. Ralston's not playing, gets a game. Yet we've got Johnson, who's playing Champions League football, top of the Austrian league, doesn't get a game. Away in Greece, Ferguson had a really good game, gets dropped for Ryan Christie. Now, I've got no problems with Christie coming in. I wanted Ryan Christie to start. He had a stinker. He was crap. However, what I didn't want was Ryan Christie starting right wing. He's been one of the best number 6s and number 8s in the Premier League this season. Playing central midfield, his pressing game is fantastic. So we play him right wing. Why? Because he wanted to play McLean, who had a good game in Greece, but doesn't mean he was going to have 2 good games. And it felt like, right, okay, I need to get Christie in, but I'm not dropping McLean. Well, Ferguson by default was the only one left because he was never going to drop, and he shouldn't drop Gilmore, McTominay or McGinn. We've got a lot of really good central midfielders, and that's about it. And it shows. Ferguson dropped. Should never have been dropped. Captain of Bologna, who are currently sitting 4th in Italy. Great performance out in Greece. A very energetic performance. Important to the way we played. Dropped. And it's unforgivable. It is unforgivable. He speaks about these young players and about how you can chuck them in too soon and how it can be damaging for them. We've just got our arse handed to us by a 17-year-old playing for Greece. They're flashing up the average age of that squad, full of 17, 18, 22-year-olds. Meanwhile, we're churning out a 42-year-old goalkeeper. My faith in Clarke is gone. I think he's been good for us. I think he's been important for us. But I'm looking ahead to the World Cup qualifiers. We play Greece again. Well, 3 halves of football out of 4... we've just got pumped by them. It's hard to have confidence. Suddenly we're going to finish above them because we're going to have to. Denmark in there. Maybe prime Clarke, when it was good under Clarke, you might fancy getting something. We've shown that we're capable of good results under Clarke. But at the minute, I just don't have that hope for facing Denmark. We need to finish at minimum second so we can get into the playoffs and try and get into that World Cup tournament. But at the minute, it's hard to believe that we will achieve that. And I think it just feels... national team managers are different to club managers because you can't go buy players. You've got to work with the pool of players you've got. And quite often, it just goes stale. You have a group of players you get on really well with. You have success, relative. And then at the end of it, that group of players are done now. You need to refresh and that bring the new generation through. And there's not loads of international managers that oversee that time and time again. They tend to go with the group of players that come in, they have that group of players, they do well, then once the players start getting on a bit, once it starts going stale a bit, the manager sticks with them a bit too long. And I feel like at the moment we probably need somebody else to come in and see these new young players into the squad and also get, let's call it Steve Clarke's old guard, get them out of the team. Hanley should never have been in the squad, never mind the team. And that's what's going to cost Clarke in the end. It won't cost him his job because the question is, should he be sacked? The question isn't, will he be sacked? Because I think we all know the answer is no. But right now, the biggest defence I've seen for keeping Steve Clarke is 1, there's nobody to replace him. And 2, is because of what he has achieved thus far. The defence that isn't offered up much at the moment as to why Clarke should keep his job is that he's the right man for this World Cup qualifying campaign. He's keeping his job not because he's the right manager or the best manager for the Scotland job. He's not keeping his job because he's going to take us to the World Cup. He's keeping his job because the SFA cannot identify and attract somebody to replace him. That's why he will be here for that World Cup qualifying campaign. But will we be at the World Cup? No, I don't think we will be. What I think is most likely to happen is what Steve Clarke says there's a 75% chance of happening, which is he just sees his contract out and goes at the end of it. And I think that is most likely to occur. And that's pretty sad. We rocked up at Euro 2020 with hope, with excitement. We rocked up at Euro 2024 with hope and excitement. But we're rocking up to this World Cup qualifiers, not much hope and little excitement. And that's a bit sad. He's ruining, I fear he's going to ruin his legacy. But can he change now to get us to the World Cup? I don't think so.